Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 814, 814, June the 18th, 2019, Tuesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, before I get to the news of the day, I just wanted to give my thoughts on just to give my perspective, I guess I want to say my perspective on this sort of ongoing deal with Papadopoulos, Downer, and whether or not there's a transcript and all this sort of stuff, because it just keeps getting drug along, and I just want to try to put it in context to show how important that this could be if in fact there is a transcript of Papadopoulos and Downer, and if in fact what Papadopoulos says is true, which is that he didn't say anything to Downer about having the Russians having Hillary's emails or having dirt on Hillary Clinton or anything in regards to Hillary Clinton or Russia. So we've had Papadopoulos now for a while going on interviews, and he's been saying that he does not recall, and he says he remembers the conversation pretty well, he does not recall telling Alexander Down the Hatch Downer anything about the Russians having Hillary's emails or having dirt on Hillary. Or he says, in fact, the topic of Russia and Hillary or emails, none of those things he said in his conversation with Downer even came up, to the best that he can recall. And he said he recalls the interaction with Downer pretty well. It didn't go very well. It wasn't very friendly. It was kind of hostile. At the same time, we've had over the past few weeks Trey Gowdy and also John Ratcliffe telling Maria Bartiromo that there is evidence that exonerates Papadopoulos. So we also have, it's not perfectly clear as to what Downer did with the information, because we have two different stories. One is that he sat on it for 2 months and then passed it on to when the WikiLeaks came out. He said at that point he passed it on through the Australian version of their State Department, and it made its way into the FBI. But we also have another story prior to that said that he went to the embassy and the U.S. Embassy in London and handed it off to intel people there. So I don't know if he did both or one of the two or which of the two is true. We did get some documents from the Australian government, so we know that he definitely sent a cable to Australia, and that was on Conservative Treehouse. You could read it. They published it, and so you could see where it talks about Downer sending this communication and that he had this meeting with Papadopoulos or whatever. So anyway, these are all the things that are at play right now. But it is extremely important that this document be if there is a transcript of Papadopoulos and Downer's meeting in London, it's extremely important that come out, that be, I assume that it's there. I mean, obviously, if that is what Gowdy and Ratcliffe are talking about, they didn't say specifically. Now, they could have been talking about a conversation that Papadopoulos had with Halper, or maybe with Misfit or someone else, but you get the impression, because of the timing of the interview and the subject that Maria Bartiromo was on, talking about Papadopoulos, that what Ratcliffe and Gowdy are talking about is that they seem to be saying that they have seen transcripts that would exonerate Papadopoulos. So keep in mind, the FBI says that the reason that they launched Operation Crossfire Hurricane on July 31st, 2016 is because of the conversation between Papadopoulos and Alexander Down the Hatch Downer, where Papadopoulos says something to Downer about, the Russians have Hillary Clinton's emails. Papadopoulos, of course, denies this. Now, we've seen Downer, I've seen him recently on 2 or 3 interviews in the last several months, and I can tell you the man is lying, okay? I can tell you he is lying. He's not telling the truth. Papadopoulos describes how Downer was holding up his phone. He says he told the FBI that. In fact, he reported Downer to Mueller's team, said, hey, you got to look into this guy. I think he was spying on me. So let's just say that Ratcliffe and Gowdy are talking about a transcript between Papadopoulos and Downer. Let's just say that that's what they're talking about. And it's likely that that is what they're talking about. And if they say that it exonerates Papadopoulos, then that would fit perfectly with what Papadopoulos is telling us in these last quite a few interviews that he's done, that he does not recall saying anything to Downer about Hillary's emails, Russians, or anything else. So if these transcripts do come out, and Papadopoulos is saying on his Twitter feed, on Twitter, he's suggesting that these transcripts do exist and that they are going to be coming out. So if that is true, and the transcripts do exist, and they are going to come out, and in those transcripts we find out that Papadopoulos said nothing to Downer about Russia having Hillary's emails or having dirt on Hillary or anything about Russians, dirt, Hillary, emails, anything like that. If this turns out to be true, then that means that the FBI, it could mean a couple things. It could mean most likely that Downer went ahead and said that Papadopoulos told him about the Russians having Hillary's emails, even though he did not, even though Papadopoulos did not tell him that, which would tell us that Downer is, number one, lying, because Papadopoulos didn't tell him that. It would tell us, number two, how would Downer know this? Well, that would mean he would have to have been told, which means he would have had to have been part of the plot. Just as I suggested a couple weeks ago, someone would have had to brought in Downer and said, hey, Halper was supposed to get the stuff from Papadopoulos that Misfit dumped on him, but he clammed up. So we need you to go sit down and have a conversation with Papadopoulos. Now, you can talk about whatever you want. Just make sure that when you leave there that you tell someone, the London Embassy or the Australian State Department, whatever, tell someone that Papadopoulos told you that the Russians have dirt on Hillary. That is what it would look like at this point. At which point, that would put the FBI at odds with Downer, because then the FBI would have to take one of two positions. Either A, yes, they knew that Downer was lying and that Papadopoulos never told him anything because he was part of the team that was investigating Papadopoulos, or Downer himself is going to have to lie in some way to try to spin himself out of it. Either way, it puts the FBI and Downer into a very, very difficult position. Because remember, they kicked off Operation Crossfire Hurricane, which led to all this stuff based on the fact that they say Papadopoulos told Downer that the Russians had dirt on Hillary. So if that turns out to be false, and transcripts of their conversation comes out, and it shows that that is false, then Downer clearly lied. Downer clearly lied. Downer clearly told either the embassy in London or the Australian State Department a lie. And then it comes down to what role did the FBI have in that? Because clearly Downer would have had to have, he wouldn't have, he approached Papadopoulos to get this information. Then he goes and says that Papadopoulos said something he did not say, if Papadopoulos is telling the truth. He had to be involved in the plot at that point. At which point the FBI is in deep shit, because that means that they would have knowingly launched Operation Crossfire Hurricane based on Downer's information, which they would then have to admit was information that was fraudulent, that Papadopoulos never gave them that information was given to Downer by someone else who was involved with the FBI plot or the CIA plot or whoever was running this plot. And it would just totally blow this entire thing out of the water. There's multiple problems that could blow this thing out of the water. But that is certainly one of the big ones. And So that's why it's so important that we get this transcript to find out if, in fact, that is what Ratcliffe and Gowdy are talking about. Are they talking about that they've seen a transcript of Papadopoulos and Downer's conversation? And if so, in that conversation, is it true that Papadopoulos, as he says, never said anything about Russia or Hillary's emails or anything else? Now, it is possible that Papadopoulos is lying. It's possible he is forgetting. Maybe he did say something. We don't know until we see the transcripts. But according to Gowdy and Ratcliffe, it sounds like Papadopoulos is telling the truth. And if it turns out that he didn't say anything to Downer, not only is the FBI being blown up for launching an investigation which they knew was based on a fraud, because it's going to be hard for them to make the case that they were fooled by Downer unless the FBI totally throws Downer under the bus and says, well, we believe Downer. Downer will probably turn around and say, wait a minute, I was working with them. They're the ones that told me to go sit down and talk to Papadopoulos and then to go and tell the State Department, the London Embassy, that he told me about emails. They're the ones that told me to do it. I was working for them. I was doing them a favor. Or maybe he was doing the Clintons a favor. Everybody will be trying to throw everybody under the bus. I'm pretty sure these people aren't going to come clean. I mean, Downer's never going to admit it. The FBI is never going to admit it. These people will go to prison, and they'll never come clean, I don't think. So it's real important that we get the transcript and find out exactly what in the hell is going on here. And again, this could be huge because, again, it's what the FBI said justified their opening Operation Crossfire Hurricane. And if that turns out to have been a setup and Downer was part of it, and that's the way it's looking now, I mean, that's bombshell as it can get. It doesn't get any worse than that. That would be the FBI not just lying about why they opened the investigation, but literally being part of a plot to manufacture the evidence used to create the fraudulent investigation. I mean, this is, you're getting in various layers deep of corruption and lies, and this is all going to shake itself out somehow, man. But I can tell you, I smell a rat. I believe Papadopoulos is telling the truth. I believe he probably didn't say anything, or their conversation, he never said anything about Hillary emails or Russia. I pretty much believe that. Could be wrong, but I believe that to be true. I'm pretty sure that Ratcliffe and Gowdy were talking about the transcript from the conversation between Papadopoulos and Downer. So we just need to get that transcript, and we need to see if that's what they're talking about. Because, again, if this turns out to be the case, that Papadopoulos never said anything, then Downer is going to have to explain why he did what he did. And then the FBI is going to have to explain whether or not they knew that Downer was lying, and whether he was part of some plot. Maybe it was a CIA plot. And the FBI can say, hey, man, we believe Downer. We thought Downer was telling us the truth. At which point, Downer's going to have to answer some questions about exactly what he was doing. How did he get the information? If Papadopoulos didn't give it to him, how did he even know? You see, there's the problem. And so maybe he'll say, well, I was working with British intelligence, or I was working for a private contractor, Hackloot, or Christopher Steele, or I was working for the CIA, or Misfit, or somebody like that. In which case he puts it off on someone else. But it's going to have to come down to either the FBI or the CIA. It's going to be one of those two. One of them had to be in the mix, if not both. Man, oh man. When it all comes out, I think it's going to be just absolutely bombshell. Mind-blowing. And the reason I bring this up is because Papadopoulos continues to tweet about it, including yesterday. Tweeting about it yesterday. Now, let's get to the news of the day. So we have a Russian news channel which is reporting that a Russian oligarch named Viktor Vekselberg used U.S. media companies to try and sabotage the Trump campaign in 2016. Vekselberg is worth $10 billion and is a friend of Putin and is one of the richest men in Russia. Vekselberg has been a donor to the Clinton Foundation since the Right Reverend Clinton was appointed Secretary of State. He is also there's an email where a couple people from the Clinton Global Initiative sent an email to to I think Huma Abedin trying to get a reservation for Mr. Vekselberg to appear at some sort of a function in association with the Clinton Foundation. He wanted also to attend the presidential inauguration of Donald Trump. So here we have a Russian oligarch who's a big donor to the Clinton Foundation since she was Secretary of State. And he was, according to this Russian news channel, he was trying to sabotage the Trump campaign in 2016 by putting up lots of money to run ads on various media platforms. So that's kind of interesting. Here we have a Russian oligarch, a friend of Putin, Clinton Foundation donor associated with the Clinton Global Initiative, donating lots of money into American media organizations that specifically were set up to target Trump. And there is collusion between he and people associated with the Clinton campaign, the Clinton Foundation, and the Clinton organization, and Clinton herself and her cronies. Do you think that George Stephanopoulos is going to look into that one? I'm guessing not. Judicial Watch is reporting that the State Department has responded to a letter from Chuck Grassley concerning the State Department probe into violations of the State Department policy on handling classified material. And this was in relation to the Hillary Clinton issues with her private email server. Now, the letter states that the State Department has assessed culpability to 15 individuals, some of whom were culpable in multiple security incidents. 23 violations have been issued, and these people may be receiving disciplinary actions. Yes, so the State Department has finally completed this probe into things regarding the handling of classified information, secure information by the Right Reverend Clinton, and I assume her team when she was Secretary of State. And they've now found 15 individuals who committed 23 incidents or violations. And this information, of course, is being forwarded to, I assume, the current Secretary of State. And apparently what they do now is they can issue some sort of disciplinary action or do nothing. My guess is they'll probably do nothing. But, this is certainly evidence that Mr. Huber may want to take a look at, because he's the one that supposedly is investigating the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton emails, and all the other things. Or maybe Mr. Durham wants to take a look at it. Maybe Mr. Barr wants to take a look at it. So Judicial Watch will probably make sure that happens. They'll certainly make sure everyone knows about it. And I imagine John Solomon will probably write a story on it, and there'll be people on Hannity and various other places talking about it. So it'll eventually surface its way into the mainstream, and of course it will be ignored by all the left-wing media organizations. It'll probably be covered by Fox only. Just more crimes of the Rotten Reverend coming to fruition. So Papadopoulos again tweeting like mad over the past months now. I read Papadopoulos tweets every day. So Papadopoulos tweeted out yesterday that Barack Hussein Obama, is headed to Italy to meet with the former Italian Prime Minister, Matteo Renzi. Papadopoulos is suggesting that the meeting is so that they can get their stories together. The current Deputy Prime Minister, Salvini, is actually in D.C. today. He will be meeting with Pompeo and Mike Pence. Papadopoulos is suggesting that he's not there to talk about immigration because Papadopoulos, whose wife is Italian and speaks perfect Italian, reads the Italian newspapers every day, is telling him that Spygate is the hottest topic in Italy right now. As you know, 4 intelligence officials were fired. The previous PM, Matteo Renzi, who's known to be very close to Obama, Renzi, he is currently, his party lost in the last election. So he's out of power now, but he's still the leader of his party, and he's under scrutiny and facing pressure to step down because his suspected involvement in the Spygate thing, which is currently being looked at by the parliament in Italy. In fact, the parliament in Italy, as I just reported a couple of days ago, is in session and discussing what documents that they can release and what information they can release to come clean and air out what their role and what the role of Italian intelligence was in the Spygate fiasco and the meddling in the 2016 election by the previous Prime Minister Renzi and his intelligence agencies. And we expect and we're hearing that this was all done in sort of in accordance with the Central Intelligence Agency, and that apparently, from what Papadopoulos is also saying, is that Obama may have leaned on them, pressured them to take part. And there's some other stuff going on too that's still kind of out there in the ether, not totally proven, that I'm looking at. I think many of you know what I'm talking about. I have not reported on that yet. I'm tempted to. I'm watching it, but there's just it's still not. There's not enough confirmation. But at some point I'll probably talk about it, and some of you know what I'm talking about. So the Rotten Reverend Clinton tweeted out in response to President Trump's interview with George Stephanopoulos, where he told Stephanopoulos that Hillary should be in jail. And of course that she was, they were spying on his campaign and all the rest. So the Rotten Reverend Clinton tweets out, on the one hand, the president makes nonstop outlandish claims in his recent ABC interview about my campaign in Russia. On the other hand, Paul Manafort, Michael Cohen, Roger Stone, Michael Flynn, Rick Gates, Papadopoulos, and the entire Mueller report. Now, to that tweet, Papadopoulos tweets out to Hillary, ironically, the Mueller dossier has exonerated everyone and has launched new, real investigations. So Papadopoulos is keeping up with the Rotten Reverend. He's absolutely correct. And the Rotten Reverend knows it. She's a disinformation agent. She's a propagandist and a liar. Because she knows that Paul Manafort and Rick Gates, they were indicted on nothing having to do with Russia. And all the claims made in the dossier about them, specifically Manafort, are false. Michael Cohen had nothing to do with Russians, and everything that was claimed about him in the dossier has also been proven to be false. Roger Stone is an innocent man. He's not been proven guilty of anything. He's been charged. He's been indicted. But right now, he's trying to get a hold of the Rotten Reverend Clinton's CrowdStrike report that she paid for, that claims it was the Russians that did it. That is still working its way through the court system. And if Roger Stone is successful at getting his hands on the CrowdStrike information, he'll likely be exonerated. Michael Flynn, of course, was set up. forced to plead guilty, or else they were going to use Gestapo tactics on him and charge or indict his kid. He was threatened. But now he's got a good lawyer, and it looks like he's getting ready to go on offense. So that story may be changing as well. Of course, Papadopoulos has got a book out. He's all over TV, and he's telling the truth about how he got set up by the Rotten Reverend Clinton's goon squad. And the Mueller report, it basically, just as Papadopoulos says in his tweet, it pretty much exonerated everyone and all the claims made in the dossier. So the Rotten Reverend Clinton is, again, a propagandist and a liar and a disinformation agent, trying to use the Mueller report and all these people to make a case that there's something ironic about what Trump is saying. No, Trump was exonerated. So was everyone exonerated by the claims made in the dossier about Russian collusion. That's all a done deal. And so, I assume she's frightened. She should be. She paid for it all. She planned, organized, directed this entire coup. Yep, she sure did. She's a sociopath. Now we have Paul Sperry is saying that the Washington Post is preparing a story on how Misfit is preparing a story on Joseph Misfit. So Paul Sperry tweeting out that Washington Post is preparing to do a story on Misfit. And who is doing the story? Well, it's a friend of Benjamin Witt's, who is, of course, Comey's good buddy. And Paul Sperry says that they're trying to get out ahead of the story. Comey is too big of a sissy and a fraud to try to do it himself. He always gets other people to do his dirty work, just like the rotten Reverend Clinton. So he's suggesting in the next couple days, Washington Post is going to write an expose on Joseph Misfit, and the only reason they're doing it is because they've probably learned through some back channels that Misfit is about to be given up. He's about to talk, and they're going to find out the truth. And so what they're trying to do is get out ahead of it. I don't see how anything they can say about Misfit, if they tell the truth, helps them, even if they get out ahead of it. Whether we find out today or we find out 2 weeks from now, or a month from now, or 3 months from now, that Misfit was not a Russian agent, but was in fact a Western intelligence agent working, maybe, likely, for the CIA, Italian intelligence, maybe the British intelligence. Who knows? But we know what we've been told is bullshit. We know that. Go ahead and get out ahead of it. Sooner the better. It's not going to help you, Jim. Alrighty, Dumbass of the Week. I'm thinking I should probably nominate myself for a position for Dumbass of the Week because I kind of blew it again this week. I got confused on my days. Fortunately, most of you are way ahead of me and you got your votes in on Sunday, which is when you're supposed to do it. But I actually was a day behind. So just so you know, I did go back and look at both the Sunday and Monday comment section so that everybody would get their votes counted. Because I told everybody Sunday to vote on Monday when you're supposed to vote on Sunday. So anyway, I kind of screwed up. It happens. And but anyway, I did go look at the comment sections from both Sunday and Monday. So everybody's vote is going to be counted. Very close competition this week. Lots of good candidates. Let's go through the list. Joe Soban, he went with George Stephanopoulos with the Sergeant Schultz defense. I know nothing. We have Gordon. He went with McCabe, Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray, and the Pencil Neck Geek, Schiff. We have, excuse me, Keith Fellows. And he wants whoever believes the polls or Comey. Yep, that's good. Probably won't win, but it's good. Gene, he's going to go with Acosta, Omar, and MoveOn.org. Yes, indeed. 3 good choices. Kilda, of Going with Stefaganopoulos, Theresa May, and Sadiq Khan. Yes, indeed. Larry, he's going with McCabe. Good choice, Larry. Charles, he's going with Valerie Jarrett. Oh, yeah. Joe Mack, going with Stefaganopoulos and the mainstream media. Douglas is going with Graham, Lindsey Graham, Stefaganopoulos, and Jim Acosta. Jonathan is going with the Pencil Neck Geek Schiff, Stefaganopoulos. Oh, I'm sorry. No, he's going with Schiff and McCabe and Stefaganopoulos. Jack is going with McCabe, Comey, and the Pencil Neck Geek. Roy is going with Schiff, the Bug-Eyed Fool, the Pencil Neck Geek. Schiff for brains. Nice move, Roy. Mark is going with Stefaganopoulos. Jeanette is going with McCabe, Valerie Jarrett, and Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray. Solid picks. Peter is going with Comey. Yes. Omar and Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray. We have Walker on the Hill going with Andy McCabe, Stefaganopoulos, and Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray. We have Dr. Lee going with Omar, Jim Acosta, and Lindsey Graham. Linda is going with Madam Botox, Nancy Pelosi. Lori Holt, she's going with Andy McCabe. Freddie Sheffer is going with Schiff, the Pencil Neck Geek, and Stefaganopoulos. JC, he likes McCabe as well. Youngblood, he also going with McCabe. We have Susan. She's going to go with the newscaster who commented on Trump's response regarding... I know what she's talking about. She explained it in the memo there. So there was a interview. It's kind of complicated to explain, but there was an interview. I think the guy was a CNN reporter, and he was doing the most unbelievable spin job you can imagine about how it's okay if you pay someone to do a dossier of dirt from a foreign government, but not okay if they volunteer that information and no money exchanges hands. Another way, it's perfectly legitimate if you do it this way. It's a crime if you do it the other way. Well done, Susan, for noticing that. I did see that video, by the way, yes. Mike G, he's going with Trump for his response to Stefaganopoulos about whether or not he would take a call if someone called. And, I don't know. I mean, I think it was pretty much overspun or overblown, really. I don't think it was that big of a deal. The media made a big deal out of it, but it's not really that big a deal, and I think Trump explained it pretty well. I didn't really have a problem with it, but I can certainly understand why it drew some heat on him, and I can understand why Mike would suggest that. So the final tally is that we again had a tie for first place. It's a tie for Dumbass of the Week. It's been happening a lot lately. So this week we have a dead even tie for first place between Stefaganopoulos and Andy McCabe. McCabe and Stefaganopoulos. McCabe and Stefaganopoulos tie for first place. The Bug-Eyed Fool, the Pencil Neck Geek, Adam Schiff, comes in second place for Dumbass of the Week. And rounding it up, in third position, Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray, bringing up the rear in number 3. So, the winner of Dumbass of the Week shared between Stefaganopoulos and McCabe, Schiff, the Bug-Eyed Fool, number 2, and Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray, number 3. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. You guys have a good afternoon. See ya.